Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome again, listeners. You are listening to Resonating Reflections with me, Fatima J, on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. We're also online at ramadanradio.org and streaming on Facebook Live. And today our guest is Remington Sloan. So we're going to talk about his journey as a revert in Islam. Please do call in, text, WhatsApp with your feedback, questions, and comments on 077 614 60614. That's 077 614 60614. So, yeah, welcome. Hope you enjoy our show today. So, Brother Remington Sloan, aka Abdullah, thank you very much for joining us today as a special guest. So I'd like to really just sort of introduce you quickly. You are basically an entrepreneur. You have experience in community work and helping people resolve legal problems. So today we're going to talk about your journey before and after becoming a Muslim. I hope I probably haven't done you justice, but please do add to that short intro about yourself. Over to you.
Well, I entered the fold of Islam in 2012. Prior to that, basically, before my journey started in Islam, I'm a qualified filmmaker from New York University Film School, which I graduated in 1993. I came back to the UK after graduating, and I set up my own film production company, doing fashion shows, weddings, conferences, various types of shows. Did that for 6 years, and basically at that time the market started bottoming out. Got married. I was married for 24 years.
Wow, mashallah. That's actually amazing. Knowing the stats with marriages these days, as you can appreciate.
Yeah, 24 years. 2 lovely kids, boy and a girl. When I became a Muslim in 2012, I waited 6 years to ask my wife to join me in Islam, and unfortunately, she didn't. And as a result, I walked away basically from the marriage. Hence, I'm now divorced and single. When I took my Shahada in Peckham Masjid, if anyone knows Peckham, Southeast London,
yeah,
I was fortunate enough to be greeted by over 300 brothers at the Jummah prayer, and out of those 300, 6 of them basically became my teachers, because I'm the only Muslim in my family at present.
all right. So
go on.
When did you take your Shahada?
It was November the 2nd, 2012, on a Friday. I went to bed November the 1st as an unbeliever, and the next morning I found myself outside the mosque asking to take my Shahada.
Amazing. So what triggered you to make that change in your life? And you mentioned you're the only Muslim in your family.
Yeah, I'm known as the big one in my family because I'm the oldest of 6. Going back to 1993, no, not 95, sorry, 1997, when my daughter was born. She was only 2 weeks old when my younger brother was involved in a road traffic accident. He used to work for Pizza Hut part-time. He was only 17 at the time, and I was actually filming a wedding at the time. And I got the call from my mum that my brother was involved in a serious accident. And by the time I got to the hospital in Tooting, he'd already passed away. That experience wrecked the family. I mean, I've always believed in God. I'd like to believe my younger brothers and sisters also believed in God, but none of us were really practicing as such. And I think from that moment, that's when I began my journey in searching for answers as to why are we here? Why do we die? What is the whole purpose, the design of everything that we are so inexperience or lack the knowledge thereof then of our creator. And I think through the death of my brother led me to Islam, the fold of Islam.
So that was the turning point in your life.
Yeah.
And that must have been quite devastating for the family. But it's subhanAllah, like Allah can guide people in the most profound ways. So clearly that had an effect on you to ponder, I guess. What did it make you think about when that happened?
Well, obviously, I think we as human beings can be selfish when everything is going right for family and friends, and when you have a stark reminder of our fragility in terms of how vulnerable we are as a race. Once someone that you love, grew up with, all of a sudden is not around anymore, it makes you delve deep inside yourself to find out the answers as to why certain things happen in the world. And it does make you feel insecure for a period of time. I mean, people grieve in different ways. Some people grieve internally, some people grieve externally. For my mum, she didn't show her emotions for at least 2 years, and I couldn't understand at the time when the whole family was going through the grieving process. It took my mum 2 years for it to kick in, put it that way.
Right.
And I saw the devastation on her, and it's not a nice thing to go through. I wouldn't wish it on anybody.
No, and of course we have just going towards the end of a pandemic, as you can imagine. So a lot of even though it is the end and final destination and certain destination, it still doesn't make it easy losing loved ones.
Yeah.
But what I want to also ask is, how did you feel after becoming a Muslim?
I felt like a dark cloud from above had been removed from me. All I could see is, I just felt like a newborn baby, so to speak. I just felt light on my feet. I just felt like everything was becoming much clearer to me. It was the best decision I made, and what I realized for reverts especially, it was a big sacrifice, for me to undertake. I didn't really understand anything about Islam, not even the 5 daily prayers. I didn't even know how to pray 5 times a day. I knew how to pray. Didn't really know much about the fasting, how that works and everything. So it was a culture shock for me in that respect. Because what you don't know, you don't know. And for me, it was like a journey of 1,000 steps starts with the first step.
Yes, I can imagine that must have been really a huge change in your life. I mean, overnight, in fact, right?
Yes.
Because you have to adapt when you become a Muslim, or the life that you're used to before. Of course, it's a lot of sacrifices when you become a Muslim. So what challenges did you face in your journey, and how did you overcome those?
I would mention, obviously, 2 principal points. One being when I was braced in the fold of Islam by those 6 individuals who are still pretty much part of my life even now. One of them being my teacher from Pakistan. If I have a question or anything, I can just call him up or turn up at his business premises, and he'll sit down, accommodate me, and give me the answers that I'm looking for. So to me, I look at him as a father, and he's always said to me, "You're like a son to me." He always used to say to his wife, "Abdullah, we got this new revert that's just come into the fold of Islam," and he asked so many questions. And his wife would say, I hadn't met his wife. She would say, "Well, he's new. He's soaking the information up like sponge. You've got to fill him up with knowledge. That's what he's lacking at the moment."
Overload, information overload.
Because I'm always asking questions, and mashallah, like I said, he's like a dad to me. He's just taken me on, and yeah, he's still with me today, 8 years in as a Muslim. What I think one of the difficulties that I had to overcome, and I'm sure most reverts can resonate,
Reverts. Okay.
is learning the prayers, Surah Fatiha. That wasn't, a big deal for me. But what was the big deal? What was the problem? Was trying to fit in those 5 daily prayers. And I remember what I used to do. I used to fit in my outside worldly activities into the salah, and it would never work. And I remember one particular day I was in the bathroom and I was doing my wudu, and I called a friend. His name's Assad. Still remember his name. And I said, Assad, I'm overwhelmed. I've only done 2 prayers for the day and I don't know what to do. And, and he said to me, just focus on the fard prayers. And from the moment he said that to me, the penny dropped. And I just focused on the fard prayers for a period of time. And what I started doing eventually was I'd focus on the prayers first, which is our obligation, our priority to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then my worldly affairs, they come after. So that's what made it easy.
Okay, so I mean, that's the crux of Islam, really. It's a manual and a tool for life, day to day, month to month, and years. So it's great that you were able to. Would it be fair to say that you were quite one of the lucky ones to receive, good support being a revert? Because we know that sometimes reverts don't have the support that's really necessary for them to even stay in the fold of Islam. Sometimes they leave because they don't feel that sort of like community and really that ummah and the strength of it that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam explained, where it's like brick and mortar and one. And sometimes that is a struggle for new Muslims. But would you say that you didn't experience that lack of support?
No, our creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is beautiful. I can't give him enough praise. When I look back and resonate on my experience, my journey in coming to the fold of Islam, yes, I had a support from day one. I mean, even the name I was given, it wasn't my choice of a name. The guy who did the Shahada gave me the name Abdullah. And I remember 6 months down the road, I went back to him and I said to him, Uncle, why did you give me the name Abdullah? Where did that come from? And he said, when you was doing your Shahada, Allah told me to name you Abdullah. So I said to him, what does Abdullah mean in Islam? And he said, basically, it means the servant of Allah. So what I'm trying to say is, because I'm the first member in my family to become a Muslim, and I had no support system in order for me to maintain my connection with my creator, he devised these 6 people who had profound effect on my learning curve and learning the basics of Islam and remained in the fold of Islam. And I have seen personally for myself with experience that many converts do come into the fold of Islam, depending on where they are geographically. Sometimes that support in that masjid is not there. You might have a masjid where guys just come in, they do their 5 prayers and they go. It's just 5 daily prayers, come and go. So whereas a revert comes in, it's like they're in an abyss. It's like they don't know from A to B. They don't know who to go to. They have no reference point. It's like a blank canvas to them.
Okay, yeah, I'm sure. I mean, like you said, it's what you don't know unless you're taught otherwise. But of course, sabr is the key in Islam, and it is a test in itself, really, to see the sincerity of the believer. So I'm sure you had your fair amount of tests. Would you agree? I wanted to ask, actually, how did your family members react when you chose this path?
Positive and negatives. The positive was my daughter just turned 16 in August, and that was my first Ramadan. And the hours, obviously, I think it was 19, 20 hours. And I remember we was having her 16th birthday party in the garden. And all the family members and guests found out that obviously I'd just become a Muslim, and I was fasting. So they said, "Oh, you can at least have some water then, right?" I went, "No, no water, no food." No. So my daughter's looking at me and she's thinking, "Okay, you've just become a Muslim. I get it." So I had the support in that respect, but that was the first, what you'd kind of say would be the intro into what it is a Muslim goes through during the month of Ramadan. I had also was told, through various family members, that most people thought that was only going to last 2 years. In it was. Is it a fashion? Is it something that Remington's going through for the moment? But those 2 years are now have turned to 8 years, and I'm still here.
SubhanAllah, yeah, you stuck it through, mashallah. Alhamdulillah. So what advice would you give to Muslims to do differently in hindsight for a person entering into Islam?
I think, obviously right knowledge is very important in Islam, because wrong knowledge can set someone astray, which is not what we want. I would say, if you see a new brother or sister coming into to the masjid and just taking their shahada, I think it's incumbent on Muslims to give their brother and sister the support they can in terms of learning the Surah Fatiha, teach them how to do wudu, teach them how to pray in sequence, just the basic fundamentals, just to get you started. Nothing too heavy, because if the advice is too heavy, sometimes you can scare off a new believer because they become overwhelmed with information. So that would be my advice. Just bring them in, just induct them, and just be there for them for at least, I would say, minimum 6 months, until they've got a sure footing and they know what they're doing. Because anything less than 6 months, they're still on the tightrope, rocking.
And the shaitan's like, no, come back, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not easy, I can imagine. But so in terms of you as a Muslim in your family of non-Muslims, how did you make them understand? Did you have to face questions from them as to, because you said you made a decision to exit your marriage because of entering into Islam, and that's a massive sacrifice you made.
Yes, it was. It wasn't an easy one. How can I put it? Without getting too personal. Basically, when I met my missus, before I became a Muslim, she was in the church, and I followed her in the church briefly. When I say briefly, literally probably a year. So when I obviously became a Muslim, I was expecting the same in return, but that didn't avail. So what I remember someone saying to me, or something that I read about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and I stand by this. It says that if you're raising non-Muslim children like myself, at the time, they're now grown up now, if you're going to invite them into the fold of Islam, invite them through your character and your conduct, because we are pretty much ambassadors for Islam. And if you show a stereotypical side, or what's been printed in the media or whatever, that is not gonna be beneficial for them to want to embrace Islam. But if you show them through your character and conduct, i.e. kindness, support, don't our duty as Muslims is basically to convey the message. That's what Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said. Convey the message and then walk away and leave the affairs with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that individual. As long as you've done your part, Allah's.
That's it, really. Yes. There's no compulsion in religion, as we know.
Yeah.
And of course, as you know, we have variations of practice in terms of being Muslim, so different levels. So what would you say, it's interesting you actually refer to conduct, because through the conduct you might give sort of a view which does not conform with what the Deen says, and it gives a misrepresentation, hence why the media, they're going on that misrepresentation based on a few
Yes.
actions. So in terms of conduct, how can you find a circle of good influence as opposed to bad influential Muslims?
I think the greatest thing my teacher taught me, um, and I'm hoping that the Muslims as well listen, as well as reverts listen, that are new into the fold of Islam. The one key advice that I was given was, if you wanna attach yourself to a good circle of Muslims, you will find these Muslims in the masjid at Fajr times.
Okay, that's probably a hard one, but
It's the hard
it's
one, but
probably true.
it's true for the main reason. We all know that Fajr, if we knew the reward in the hereafter for praying Fajr in the masjid, Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, says that we would crawl on our bellies to the masjid. And he's just echoing a sentiment of all the five prayers. They're all important, but the Fajr prayer is the most difficult prayer because most of us like our sleep, and it's a sacrifice to get up early to find ourselves in the mosque, especially in the winter times. And for
Right.
me, the piety, as my teacher said, is in the front row. That's where all the pious people are, because they make the effort to stand in the front row of the masjid doing their salah.
Okay. So as you know, we can have lots of do's and don'ts when it comes to Islam and Islam being represented as that. So do you think that we don't get to see the merciful and compassionate side um, as new Muslims? Do you think it's just a lot of, sort of harsh do's and don'ts?
Um,
Or is there a way we can have a balance
I
when we're
think,
trying to, reach out to new Muslims?
I mean, life is about balance. You know, if there's too much one way, it affects the counterbalance. And I think in life you need to be neutral. Um, I remember an experience where a guy was giving a talk to a guy who came through the door, and this this guy is knowledgeable. He trained in I believe Saudi Arabia, but the advice that he was giving at the time to the guy would have scared me off. And I didn't see that guy come back. And I make dua that the guy does return back to the fold of Islam. It was like, are you sure you want to become a Muslim? And the guy is of adult age. So that's an extreme example. Um, a balance in any given situation is, you've got to be compassionate against your fellow Muslim. If you see a brother or sister doing something wrong, speak to them in a manner that you'd want to be spoken to yourself. Show them compassion. And the one thing that I did from day one was, if I saw a brother doing something wrong, I wouldn't halo him out in front of everybody else. I would wait for the salah to be over, and I would discreetly go over to him in the corner and sit down and talk to him. And you wouldn't know what we'd be talking about, because it would be that discreet, and that would be the compassion that I would exercise. Because no one wants to be humiliated, especially in a gathering, in a mosque, etc. So yeah, compassion is very important.
Absolutely. And really that goes back again to what the Prophet ﷺ taught us. So you are a man of different trades, but I'd like to talk about your different roles. So let's start off as your role as a father. Can you talk us through that, and whether your children have expressed interest in becoming a Muslim?
Okay.
How did you find that role?
When I became a Muslim, in terms of bringing up non-Muslim children, that in itself is a challenge, being a father, period. Um, but what I taught my kids from day one was, if you need something from me, um, ask me because you need it, not because you want it. There's a big difference, and that's all about balance again. And I've seen that the way my kids have grown up, and what adults and people of connected to the family have said, that you've brought up your kids exemplary. I mean, your kids are the type of kids that people would want to take away for the weekend and look after them because again,
Really? What's your secret?
when you bring kids into this life, you've got to love them. Let's not don't have kids. Be loving, be supportive. With my son and my daughter, I never missed a school meeting. I never missed a play. I took my daughter to her first college on the first few days to show her how to get. My son, the same. I never missed. The thing with me was, if there was a parents' evening, they know Mr. Sloan is there. If my daughter or my son is sick and I've got to take them to the doctor, Mr. Sloan is there. Yeah, because at the time my missus had her own business, and Lordship Lane. So I had to alleviate as much of the responsibility from her because she had her business to run, but she had just set up. So I would take on that responsibility and just be there for my kids. And there's not one day my kids can actually say to me, my dad was absent. I was always visible.
That's important as a parent, isn't it?
It's very
You
important.
know, you don't have to think of traditional parenting roles. Really, it's just helping each other.
Yeah.
And the kids pick up on that too.
And I'm hoping, I don't know if it will happen in my lifetime. I mean, I do see my son and my daughter eventually becoming Muslims, but I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime.
Inshallah.
I hope it does, inshallah. Because as I said to you, it comes back to your character and conduct. If dad is exercising good character and conduct through the fold of Islam, then Islam must be a good religion.
Absolutely. I agree with you. So, what advice would you give to Muslim parents who are raising non-Muslim children?
You have to be tolerant with your children, obviously. They can be very demanding. Exercise love, caution, the natural attributes of a good parent. Just always be there for them in terms of, I'm not saying, to cut off your responsibilities and your time, whatever. I'm just saying that the more you are there for your kids, they will see through your character and your conduct as a person who's exercising and promoting Islam. I put it this way: young children, they can tell the difference between good spirit, bad spirit, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim. So what I'm trying to say from an adult perspective, the same will be with your children. They will see the good and the bad characteristics. And if you exercise the good enough that it becomes natural, good only follows good.
True words, true talk. Absolutely. So let's move on to your role as an entrepreneur. So I know you've had a business in the past. I'm not sure if you still do have a current business, but do talk us through your entrepreneurship in the past.
Okay. In 2017, I founded a company called Watercress Limited, and basically we were a bespoke bottling company, where we bottled high-end water for prestigious establishments like hotels, casinos, hospitality, you name it. And it gave me the opportunity to travel the world, places like Dubai, Thailand, Monaco.
Amazing. This is after becoming a Muslim?
This is after becoming a Muslim, yeah.
Well, so a Muslim's life is not boring.
No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not. I've got lovely pictures of lovely places. I just thought it was the time for me to branch out and do something for myself that wouldn't have the constraints of being put in a precarious situation of not being able to practice my religion. When I was in Dubai, I was received at a rapturous reception. There were 4 other bottling companies in Dubai at the time, the hospitality show. And I had the Dubai police, I had a sheikh, various entities approach me and say, just looking at your display and what you're about, if you were to set up this business, this beverage company in Dubai, you would do well. And ever since then, I've fallen in love with Dubai, and I'm hoping one day, inshallah, I'll be able to go over there, set up my business, and hopefully live and practice Medina out there.
Inshallah. So they, based on your presentation of your product, I'm assuming it was ihsan, which is, you know, another principle from Islam, which is to deliver excellence and quality.
Yes.
They were able to appreciate that, and you say that your business was successful as a result.
It was so successful that me and my business partner, we was actually approached by a journalist who works in Dubai, and they covered a feature of us in Dubai, took pictures, it's all online. And
Inshallah.
yeah, I mean, it was just it was only a 3-day event, but it was just nothing but positivity. I mean, it was a gamble, it was a risk, but for me it paid off, because now I have connections in Dubai in every sector. And this particular guy came up to me, he sampled the water, and he said, I've got to tell my uncle, who's a sheikh, he's loaded, he will buy pallets off you. And he said, I'll come back tomorrow with him. And I thought, okay, you know, alhamdulillah, let's see what happens. He came back the next day, he kept to his word, he introduced me to his uncle just gave me his card, and to say, I'm ready to be one of your major customers. You know, because in Dubai, I don't know if most people know this, but depending on the size of your wealth, your living room could be the half the size of a football pitch, and they'll just put a pallet of water because they consume so much water in, you know, in a high temperature.
Yes, it's I think 50 degrees around, or in the 30s and above.
Yeah.
So it's good to have, you know, quality. Did it help that you were a Muslim, by the way, delivering this product? Like you had a Muslim face?
Yes, I think that the half of the battle, you know, greeting most of my potential customers, you know, giving them salam alaikum. Yes, I think that helped. And you know, like I said, the reception was so overwhelming that I just thought, I've got to come back to this place one day. I've got to come back, because there was no hostility. Even though, you know, I'm a Muslim, I also think spiritually it's what you emanate from yourself in meeting the people, because people see people. And most of the people that, look, I had people from other stands were sending their workers over to my stand to say they're holding meetings with important people, can they sample my water? And I'd give
SubhanAllah.
So why wouldn't
The barakah, that's it. The barakah was flowing. MashaAllah. You know, I wanted to also say, did it make it easier in terms of practicing in a Muslim country, predominantly Muslim country, as a
Yeah,
new Muslim?
yeah, I mean, it's the one thing. Before I went to Dubai, I would hear my teacher say this to me. He said, obviously, where he's from, they call the azan out and you hear it. Unlike the UK and the Western world, it's called inside. So it's just hearing the azan called from your hotel. It's like, wow, you know, you can't escape Salah because you hear the azan being called. And for me, that was, you know, a spiritual vibe for me. It was like, I didn't know it. If someone described it to you, it's not the same. You have to be there. I can't describe it in words, but you just have to be there.
I
It's like
agree.
just in the zone. It's like, yeah, when's the next Salah? I'm ready.
Alhamdulillah. That's great. You know, I mean, you're also involved in a lot of community work.
I am.
What type of work do you do? How do you help people in that regard?
Um, I'm not a lawyer by profession, but I understand contracts. Maybe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed this quality upon me. It's not something that I went out my way. To tell you a true story, how it started was I'd injured my back. I used to be a bus driver for 7 years, and I helped a friend lift a pool table to dislodge the white ball. And the guy was a lot slimmer than me, and I couldn't get my hands securely under the table. And basically, I suffered a slip disc, which put me out of work for over a year. And I'd just taken out a contract with iPhone, and obviously my wages had been drastically reduced. I was on sick pay for a long time, and I couldn't keep up the payments. So, to cut a long story short, I went to Phones for You in Camberwell and see if I could get my phone chipped on just a SIM only. So I signed the contract, agreed everything, and I went next door to go and get the phone chipped. And the guy next door said, "Look, we can't chip your phone because it's an iPhone, it's unchippable." So I've gone back next door to explain this to the supervisor, and basically she said that there's nothing we can do because you signed the contract. And I said, "You sure?" And she goes, "Yeah." So basically what I did, I went home, opened up my laptop, looked under the
Google.
looked under the Sales of Goods Act, blah blah blah. Wrote a
Mm.
letter to the managing director of Phones for You, explained the situation, what happened, and I said, if this matter is not resolved, I'm going to report you to the financial ombudsman, and there's some other company, I can't remember the name. It's on TV. And within 10 days, he responded back to me. He said, "Mr. Salon, I'm sorry to hear about your experience. We've now rescinded your contract." And yeah, it just started from there. So I helped out one brother in the masjid one day. I can't remember, it was something minor, and he got the result that he wanted. And basically, people just started passing my name around, and they will come to me with their legal problems. I look at the contracts, I'd look at the situation, and I've got a good eye for detail. And in 5 years, I've won 15 cases. I've never lost a case. I even,
MashaAllah.
I even had
Okay.
to, I even had to take a company to court through Watercress, who was supposed to have done a job for us and didn't deliver the items, and we ended up boarding a flight to Dubai without our particulars. So I had to come back, had to prepare the case, went to court. It was a 2 hour hearing. I submitted my evidence to the judge, and that 2 hour hearing lasted only 15 minutes. The judgment was in my favor, and the third party was asked to pay me within 14 days.
Excellent. So you're also a fighter and a fixer, mashallah.
I would say I'm a mechanic. People come to me with their problems, and I fix their problems.
Mashallah. It's a good skill to have. I mean, it takes you a long way, especially, the problems never end, especially in this part of the world. And we know people always have problems with contracts. So it's great that you're putting that to use
You
with
know,
your skills.
the funny thing is, though, I will say this: of all the people, the cases I've won, I never charged or profit from any of those cases. I did it for free. Why? Because actually,
Hey.
I enjoy the process. I never took a penny, even till now. I had one guy come back to me 5 times. He's moving home. He had this problem at work, this problem, this problem. And his wife met me once, and she said, "Oh, this is the guy that's fixing our problems. Every time he comes to my house, he always fixes your problems. You're lucky to have this guy in your life." But yeah, I think if you're passionate about something, you would do it for free. That's how I look at it.
Okay. Is there anything wrong with charging for a skill?
No, I mean, there's a saying, if you're really good at something, you should charge for it. But I don't know. I don't know if it's because of my journey on how I am perfecting my art. I'm learning all the time, but contracts are just plain English to me. Um, and like I said, I just enjoy the process. I can just get to the problem straight away and iron out the wrinkles and say, right, this is what we're gonna do. But I always say to my potential clients, take my advice. If you're happy with my advice, let's roll with this. And I guarantee I will get the result that you want. If you interfere, I walk away because I'm not charging you. And
Okay, so you take whole control basically,
have
and
to, yeah, because
right.
I know the process.
Okay.
Nobody wants to go to see someone for advice and they get an opposite result, or you compound their problems even more.
Mm.
It's the result. And I'm very astute when it comes to the cases that I take on. There was one case that someone wanted me to take on it, and they worked for a big merchant bank. And I told them to bring their files, and I went through the files and I assessed the files, and I said to him, "I can't win this case, Saki." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Because you've got 2 allegations against you, and it just not." My best advice to you is, I said, walk away from the company. Just walk away. And he took my advice and he walked away. It was a hard thing to do. He worked for the company many years. I said, no lawyer who's got experience and knowledge would take this case on. It's too toxic.
Okay.
and I don't want to ruin my win rate. I don't want to compromise it. I'm just used
Rep-
to
used to winning, and reputation goes a long way as well, doesn't
it.
it?
That's true. That's true.
So you have to pick wisely, not all the battles.
No.
So let's
That's,
look at, sorry?
I was just gonna say it's all about having an edge. If you have a good enough edge on what you're
Mm.
doing, then subhanallah, yeah, you'll get the result that you want.
So speaking about edge, what does your future plans look like?
I couldn't tell you that in detail because I do not have the ability to look into a crystal ball. I'm still single. I'm looking for a wife.
Is that an advert, or we should even advertising cause there,
I think
brother Remy?
you know what the difficulty is. You see, when you come from a Muslim family, you're kind of interlinked, interconnected, and you can say, "Oh, my daughter's looking for a husband, or my husband's looking for a wife." When you the first of your kind in your family, it's a lot harder to reach out because you don't have that kind of. It takes time. It's
Mm.
not something. I mean, I'll give you an example of a female sister who I used to work with. I remember when she told me she was getting married, and within the time that she told me, within that 12 months, it was signed, sealed, done. Halas. Um,
Because you're saying because she was from a Muslim family and had the wider connections, and it made the process easier, as opposed to being a revert and
yeah,
not
it's like
having that
yeah, it's like
extended.
it's like being on a no man's island. You're on an island
Right.
onto yourself. You can put it out there, but
Mm.
that's all you can do.
Yeah, and pray and make dua and put the effort in as well.
Yeah, probably gonna need help on that one, but yeah, I'm trying. I'm trying.
Inshallah. So what are the takeaways for our listeners and audience today as a business person?
Takeaway is if you're ever gonna set up a business, don't set up a business because of the monetary value. Set the business up because it's something that you're passionate about. It's something that you think about first thing in the morning and the last thing at night. It's as simple as that. Because if you setting up the business purely because you're motivated by money, your customers will see that. They're not silly. Depending on how you set up the establishment, is it dark and dingy, or is it elaborate and bright colors? Is the atmosphere inviting? Are you pleasant to your customers even when things go wrong? People
Mm.
people
Because the
see
worst can come out when things go wrong, right?
exactly. And just just like you get up, in the mornings and pray 5 times a day to your creator, have the same mindset when you go into business. Do it because you actually enjoy it. Yes, we have bills to pay, and when you set up a business, unless you're a charity, you're setting up the business to make a profit. But what I'm saying is, let people see the passion in you first, because where the customers see the passion in your business, they will flock to want to do more business, and they will tell more people to come and do business with you because you
Absolutely.
stand out like a sore thumb amongst everybody else.
Absolutely. That's true. And so, I mean, if you look at now, what's the way forward for aspiring new Muslims who are wanting to maybe they experience challenges after they've become a Muslim, even in the workplace. Um, do you think that you would encourage people to start up their own businesses? Actually, in the face of the pandemic, where people have lost their jobs completely, um, I know you're also involved in online marketing. Is that right?
Online marketing, investments as well. I'm an investor.
You're an
Uh,
investor. Okay, what's the tips for investment?
Investments, if you're going to make an investment, be knowledgeable about the sector of the investment that you want to get involved in. So let's say, for example, you work for McDonald's in a fast food restaurant. If you're going to do investments, do something that knowledge comes natural to you. Don't invest outside your comfort zone that you have very little or no understanding, because you could end up losing your entire investment.
Absolutely.
Stick with what you know, or what is of interest to you. And if you don't have any, then make sure you do your diligence by doing some market researches or whatever, and cross-reference the information that you're receiving, preferably three separate sources that either converge, complement, or conflict one another.
Ah, I love those. I love those tips. Okay, because I'm always thinking of, I would love to be self-employed, but I wouldn't know where to start. So,
The talent lies within you. It's there. You just need to speak to someone so that they can extract and flesh it out. But it's there.
inshallah. So, as a Muslim, what are your takeaways for other new reverts and Muslims in general, or even non-Muslims?
Uh, is this specifically tailored to the practicing of Islam, or you're talking about?
I guess what sort of advice would you give to other Muslims and non-Muslims who are thinking of coming into Islam but not quite there yet, sitting on the fence?
I would say, I'd say probably the best advice is at least go to the masjid as a visitor, um, and maybe speak to one or two brothers, of knowledge, or sisters of knowledge. Probably just sitting on the prayer, see how it's done. Go in with specific questions that you need to find the answers to, that will support and encourage in you to take the final step or your journey in taking the Shahada. For me, obviously, Allah had a different design for me. I literally, like I said, I went to bed as a non-believer one night, and the next day I woke up taking my Shahada. So everyone's experience is differently. But what I will say about Islam, compared to any other religion out there, is that Islam is the light of religions, and Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is our teacher. The Quran is the syllabus, and Allah is the judge on the day of judgment. He's the one that's going to grade us. That's how I would describe Islam.
That's it in a nutshell, really. Thank you. And in terms of Muslims, what kind of advice would you give Muslims who are welcoming new people into Islam to do better, perhaps?
Give them as much spiritual, moral support as you can. Just try to, it's not easy, but try to put yourself on the other side of the fence. You're coming through that door for the first time. What do you see? What would be your takeaways? And what can you do to encourage a new believer who is planning to take that step into Islam and to remain in Islam? I mean, many people come into the fold of Islam, and for the lack thereof, the support, community support, they end up going back to where they originally came from in terms of their life. And it's sad to see. I've known, there's one guy that I keep in contact with as much as I can. He came into Islam recently through one of the masjids, not Peckham, and the support wasn't there. And I remember one time sitting down with him, and he was telling me he's having particular problems at the moment with his son and his wife. And I said to him, look, I understand what you're going through. I'm a revert, so I can identify with what you're saying. But at the same time, you have to make that commitment regardless of doing the 5 daily prayers. Even if you start off with just doing Fajr for 1 week alone, just doing the Fajr prayer for 1 week alone, and then the next week you do Fajr and then Zohar, and you keep doing that until you get to the point where you reach all your 5 salahs, and then it just becomes natural. We still have to obey the rules of Islam, of the 5 days. It's incumbent on us, and there's just no escaping, regardless of what pain or tribulation that you may be going through. We still have to pray our salah, and by praying your salah and keeping that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's the best in judge and guidance and support. You tell him your problems, don't tell man your problems. Make your dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he will fix your problems in time.
Ah, amazing, amazing wise words, Brother Remington. I'd like to really thank you, Jazakallah khair, for sharing your gems and experience today on today's show. And we're coming to the end of today's show, listeners. Um, I guess in a nutshell, good follows good in Remington's words. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. And coming up next, I believe, is your views at 5 o'clock. And with that, I'd like to again thank Brother Remington for joining us today. And you've been listening to me, Fatima Jabi, on Ramadan Radio 87.9 FM. Till next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam.